Hey everybody, it's Theta again, back with another Stone-Faced Reactions, doing yet another Gundam 00F. Here we are at Chapter 5, Feelings and Hopes. First up, though, let's do a little comment response like we do in the normal episodes. First up, we got Joss Phoenix. I wonder if you're gonna go after the other mangas after this one. Like, sorry, I wanted to read this as ooey oov oop, and I recognize now that you're doing double OI, double OV, and double OP. Curious thing, there's people on the main team who knows about this team. One is the least expected. Also, they were coming out monthly, if I remember. So every 4 episodes, that should give you a timeline where each episode should be. Well, that's the plan so far, which means I'll be doing these manga for some time after we finish the show, the movie, and the side bits. Kind of like Vanada's Heart, actually, except here there is just so much content to go through because, it came out so much longer. Uh, the show, I mean, and I'm catching up. As for the speed this was released, well, as I've probably mentioned in previous recordings, I suck at remembering which episode was when, and I'm trying to actively stay within the confines of the manga and not reach outside of it to do research. You know, probably what you'll want me to do, but I'm bad, and you guys hate me. It may hinder me, but the scope of it all is me reading the manga. Anyway, thanks for the comment. We got Log Hey Long. Gonna have to read the prequel manga to find out the Chill storyline. Uh, yeah. Unfortunately, I asked what order to read these in, and I was told Double OF was first. Turns out first has something before it. Oh well, not a big deal. Just means I know what the next thing is gonna be. But yeah, if I ever have questions, remember, I asked them in Discord. See if you want to help me out to not be such a big friggin' idiot. Hop on the Discord. Help me out. Help the channel out. Have your voice heard. Fail Fisher says, I appreciate you for going the extra mile to learn more about Double O. Heads up, they released a new Revealed Chronicle episode. It's not much, but the characters talked about some stuff related to GN drives. Right. Given all my screw ups related to the show, it seemed like the least I could do to get everything right. As for the Revealed Chronicle stuff, I think our I think our current plan is to do them after the series, but before the movie. That makes sense. I mean, I don't know what order they take place in, and the fact that we're already kind of halfway through season 2, there's no real good place to plop them down anymore. If you want to collect some links to all that stuff and drop them in the Discord or something, feel free. Sometimes finding stuff is a hassle, and I wouldn't complain to have the help. I believe I've linked 2 of them to Griffin already, just so we know what's coming. If there's more than 2, or if this is the third one you're saying, then yeah, really do need the help. Let's see. Lastly, last point here. It seems that these chapters all get grouped up by fives, meaning that this is the last chapter of the first volume. I discovered this by finding out that the last few pages of this chapter are actually exposition pages about the characters and the Gundams. Really reminded me of comic books where they include letters to the editor or artist or creator in the back. Where those answered questions or gave thanks, these are just give answers to questions I may or may not have or will have had. It's just nice to see. Um, Also, I won't be covering that section here in this video. It was a bunch to add, and I really wanted to cover the story elements. And I'll probably like make just a maybe an unlisted video I'll link in Discord or something where I just read what's there and get the information. But otherwise, know that I've read it and it's been digested as much as any information you've seen me take in. So, grain of salt. But anyways, let is just get into it. Chapter 5, Gundam 00F. Alright. First panel, we start off with the heavy-edged automatopoeia lines that I don't understand, but super love the art for. The next set of panels are flashing back and forth of the Pluton and the cockpit as it flips through the air and charges back towards the thrones. In the cockpit, we see Fawn moving from the shadows and right into perspective, eyes wild and mask still covered in blood from the inside. On the edge, we have Hanyo calling out blood loss detected, and that Fawn has 10 minutes left until estimated blood loss. Sorry, until estimated loss of heart function. This is an excellent first page, giving us the vibe of an action movie with a countdown and a sudden move to action. Among all the pages in the manga so far, this is the easiest one to imagine animated. On our splash page intro, we get the full-on shot of the Pluton flying straight at the Zwei, shield and saber out. Really reminding me of some classic shots of the original Gundam. Another note for anyone watching this in the future is that I'm going to be good at spotting. Sorry, I'm not going to be good at spotting the minor things that make one Gundam different from another, like the facial apparatus and shape, general shape. To me, they've always been either colorations, equipment, or the general build that define them as different. I guess again, I got really spoiled on the Witch from Mercury that we had 4 different Gundam designers, so each one from each company specifically looked different, and they used different colorations. So my goober ass can't even tell different faces through a colored helmet. So again, I'm an idiot. You're working with an idiot. Anyways, it seems like Fawn is choking on his own blood as the text bubble around him is gibberish. As Michael calls out that he isn't going to let Fawn play around, calling him a half-assed zombie. As Fawn continues to close the distance, Michael shouts out that this is useless and calls on his fangs. Being that it is their first appearance here in the manga, despite us already seeing them in the show, I'll say the same thing I probably said during that episode and equate them to the gun bits from Witch from Mercury. I don't know how much Gundam is filled with devices like these, but they turned into a mainstay of the Witch from Mercury universe, and end up being pretty cool here too, if rather ineffective compared to their Ad Stella counterparts. It kind of feels like gun bits in this show are treated with the same effectiveness as normal laser beams are, in that they are a weapon, and if you weren't being careful, you will be killed. But gun bits in Witch from Mercury are basically the weapon versus everything else, so they take like a step down in Double O. The fangs seem to encircle the Pluton, its saber striking out to destroy one of them, as another appears to clash into the shield. I guess gun bits are just easy to break across all timelines. Michael once again taunts Fawn, claiming he's going to get his ass kicked, as we see multiple fangs strike the Pluton from multiple angles. The last panel seeming to imply massive damage with particle effects and explosive bits coming off the Gundam in different areas. Alright, taking a step back, we look at the fight from the perspective of the nearby asteroid base as we return to the rest of the Angel crew. As Chal and Echo watch on, Echo panically states that Fawn is going to die out there if this keeps up. Turning to Chal, Echo looks his most empathetic in this panel as he asks if there's anything they can do. Chal replies they could if only could use the trial system. But it's not installed on the Pluton. Sherilyn then enters the room to reassure everyone that Fawn is not alone and Hanyo will do something. Taken aback, in shock, Shaw says Gundam Meister 874. So, new thing. New thing mentioned here. The trial system. We'll have to keep an eye on this for later, I guess. Also, Gundam Meister 874. Couple of thoughts come to mind. One, she's just admonishing Sherilyn for what she said and calling her out by her number. It doesn't make much sense that. Alternatively, she's saying Hanyo is a Gundam Meister, and that's her number. Also makes a little sense, only due to the fact that Hanyo is a terminal for Veda, right? So that implies that Veda could just pilot all these Gundams itself, right? Then why use people? I guess? I don't know. It leaves more questions than answers for me. I'm sure one of you all is going to say that Veda can't do things like this and it does this and this. But from here, where I'm at in the chapter, the question arises, why doesn't Veda just pilot things itself? You know, now that I'm thinking about it out loud, maybe Veda doesn't do it itself because that would be seen as like a computer takeover of humanity, and it's got to be humanity that saves itself. That seems like a theme of Gundam 00. I'm probably going to leave it down to that. It's probably humanity has to save itself from itself. Let's see. Returning back to the Gundam action, Hanyo reiterates that Fawn's blood pressure is falling and asks him to stop this. From an outside shot, we see the Fangs continue to strike at the Pluton. Fawn himself also continues to be unable to speak as blood apparently begins to leak out of his suit. Hanyo literally is beside itself as it considers that Fawn will die at this rate, and almost asks Veda what it should do. But before she can finish, we get a brief flashback to a scene from last chapter where Fawn was telling Hanyo that Veda and her are separate. Cogito ergo sum, and she is here. Hanyo tries to put this together with what she already knows, that Veda is her whole self, and that she cannot separate from it. And yet, she wants to save Fawn. Hanyo's eye glows like an innovator's as the Haru shell pops open, putting the end to all speculation as to who Gundam Meister 874 really is. On the inside of the Haru are also the words, I have control, as the number 874 fills every screen in the cockpit. Despite not being able to speak in any previous scene, and the fact it seems like he's receiving help, Fawn manages to croak out the word bitch. Our last shot of the panel is the twitching remains of the Pluton, missing an arm and a leg, beam saber presumably floating off as well. That's got to be one of the funniest things of the chapter. It's just Fawn, like 874, 874, bitch, choking it out on blood. Taking an alternative step back, this time we see the fight from the throne's point of view, as Nita asks Johan, is the fight over? He responds, it should be about time, no doubt concluding that Fawn should be dead by now. Then, for no reason, Nina decides to recount Fawn's backstory to anyone in open communications with her, I guess? Apparently, Fawn Spark's real name is Roback Stad Jr., the son of a working class couple who worked on a resource satellite. who then became a terrorist to oppose the harsh working policies of the Union. Wrapping it all up, Nina simply labels Fawn as an evil spacenoid. By the way, another Witch from Mercury callback here, but having heard people from space being called Spacians for all this time, Spacenoid just sounds so weird. I don't know how many of you are going to see this and remember, but uh, Domino's used to have a mascot called the Noid. It was an annoying thing, and the point was that you wanted to keep your pizza away from it. It was like red, had rabbit ears sort of things. It's all I can think of anytime dash noid is added to the end of a word. Anyway, back to the manga. Michael is disappointed that Fawn didn't last longer, apparently hearing that he was even wilder than he was. Charging in with a saber out, he says he will chop him up and get the solar furnace. In a two-page spread, we see new activity from the Pluton as its chest appears to open up, even as its midsection seems to start glowing with a familiar particle effect. Michael says, "What?" in disbelief. Sorry, I was trying to go for an Andros from Star Fox there. Clearly failed. In disbelief, as Johann simply looks on, Nina calls out for Michael in what I assume is concern for how close he is, as we see the Pluton just explode in front of him. Michael growls as he pulls back from the blast, calling out in question that it was a self-destruct mechanism. Johann, confident that wasn't what it was, tells Nina that they are docking. Nina seems unperturbed and playful as she acknowledged. From the other side of the explosion, a jet craft of some kind blows past, leaving a particle trail behind it and folding its wings into position. I was going to comment on the Abhul, but on closer inspection, it doesn't really resemble the other Gundam's transformed state at all. Seems like there was more to the Abhul than there is to the escape jet. Apparently, blasting through the backside of the explosion didn't give much hiding space in the vast openness of space, as the Thrones immediately spot the craft flying away. Johann and Nina set up their beam weapon and connect their Gundams together to power it, as Michael questions what will happen to the solar furnace if they shoot it down. Johann immediately responds that it is irrelevant. If they are unable to recover it, then destroying it is the right course of action. The last panel of the page is the Pluton's explosion, being enveloped by the Throne's blast as they open fire on the fleeing jet. You can't fault Johann for his logic, as it seems the solar furnace is extremely valuable tech that you wouldn't want to fall into anyone else's hands. Really, it is a ours or no one's situation. We then proceed to watch a god beam fill the space around the jet, but still manage to miss it. One of the Thrones asks if they missed it, but Johann replies that it should be impossible for an autopilot to dodge, questioning if Fawn is still alive. Michael asks what they should do now, and Johann says they have no choice but to request further instructions. Nina, for seemingly no reason once again, asks about the O Gundam, or Zero Gundam, I'm sorry. The fact the show is called Double O and it's two zeros, I'm really confused about stuff. Johann looks dejected and states that there is no point taking the I'm gonna go with zero. I'm gonna say zero. The Zero Gundam back without a solar furnace. Nina, seemingly ready to just jet from the scene, says that they are running low on particles too, so they should head home. Their evil ass Haru parrots this back, and we see them flying back towards their ship. Making contact with the Angel base once again, Team Throne states that they have another mission. so they are going to retreat for now, but that Angel should have instructions as well. Michael, to be a little dick, shouts at them that they have to go pick up the solar furnace. Johann then states that it seems that Von Spark has no intention to return and wonders if he's going to just drift away in space with the solar furnace. Chal interrupts him to assure him that they will find him. Johann accepts this and asks that they report to Veda when they do. In a small panel, we see the Throne's ship taking off towards the Earth. Back in the asteroid base, Sherilyn tries to speak to Chal, but Chal already has something in mind to say. She informs Sherilyn and Echo that they are not aware that the Pluton was piloted by Gundam Meister 874, clearly trying to disavow any knowledge of them so that they are not to get Hanyo in trouble. Turning to Sherilyn, Chal says that 874 will definitely save Fawn, and that when she does, they will find him. Sherilyn smiles and agrees. I kind of like that despite how much they seem to not get along. When the chips are down, they gather up to make sure that 874 doesn't get in trouble, and that their main concern is getting Fawn back. They don't even mention the solar furnace, which was so important to the Thrones. Sorry, a little bit of water there. We then see Chal clasping their hands together, eyes closed, giving us a hint of her backstory once again. As we get a shot of the remains of the Pluton drifting in space, she claims that it took her comrades, implying something went wrong in the past, and all those people we saw that look a lot like the people she is currently with died. She finishes with the consideration that it is now saving one of her comrades. Viewing the jet, seeming to drift through space, we see that Fawn no longer appears to be conscious. Hanyo cradles him from an upside-down position in the cockpit, stating that his body temperature is dropping rapidly, but the bleeding has stopped, placing him in a coma. Now, here is where we hit another wall of something that people are going to say I heard in season 1 of the show. Pardon me, but I assure you that I don't remember it. Medical technology in 00 is so advanced that they can regenerate limbs, as it came up for Lock-On and his eye, and mentioned as a problem for Luis and the red GN particles. I mention it here as it is said that Fawn has nanomachines in his body repairing blood vessels. If we never had the Luis debate and the recordings of the show, then this would never have come up, and I would be a lot more surprised about this here. Hanyo then indicates that the nanomachines are just holding off the inevitable, implying that if Fawn doesn't receive treatment soon, he will die. Back at Angel HQ, Chal comments that there is something strange about the new Gundams and their Meisters. Specifically, that only Angel members know Fawn's identity, and others only knew him as Von Spark. Even in Veda's files, the Meister's data are stored at the highest security, level 7. Sherilyn asks if they have access to it, and Chal responds matter-of-factly with an "of course not." That made it seem like the answer was obvious. I particularly love the middle panel of the page where we get Echo saying "true that" with a contemplative face, just trying to fit into the conversation, as he normally does. Chal then points out that guards only get level 3 access, and that our strategist from the main Celestial Being crew only has level 4 access. Echo asks about the guards she mentioned, but she only tells him that Celestial Being is a much more complex organization than he thinks. In the last panel, Chal takes on a dark tone as she says that we possessed information. Oh, sorry, I meant to put emphasis here. We possessed information that the Meisters do not, and that Veda couldn't possibly have allowed that. Meaning that there is someone with an even higher access level hiding behind the scenes. Now, we already know that the Thrones have hacked Veda by this point, as it has happened in the show. Even then, what Shaw says at the end is confusing to me. I kind of suspect that the translation should say they, not we, as that would at least make sense in context for me. At the very least, we know what is being implied. Also, no clue who the guards are. We know Mai is an agent. Are agents guards? Is Mai's brother a guard? What level access do agents get? Anyway. Back on the jet, we can see Hanyo operating a number of floating screens and talking to themselves, mostly about entrusting Fawn to her brothers and sisters, but deciding that that won't work since they would no longer recognize who she was. Additionally, they wouldn't be able to contact her without Veda knowing, so maybe they should ask Veda for help? In the background, it looks like Fawn has opened one of his eyes, despite being in a coma. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Hanyo also states that they've been dissolved in this world. But since the entire being of Hanyo is a mystery to me, I'm just going to let that one go for now. Also, I guess this implies there's a bunch of other Hanyo out there that are filled with, I was going to say holographic beings, but she touches stuff. So she's what, like a hard light construct from like Red Dwarf? Like Rimmer is? I don't know. More questions. Continuing to bait herself, Hanyo says that if Veda judges Fawn to be crucial to the fulfillment of the plan, then it will definitely save him. But that Veda knows nothing of feelings, or good and evil. Which seems weird considering you're trying to do a thing that you probably should know good and evil. Anyway. That it only collects data and chooses what is best for the plan. The panels start panning towards the moon. I realize how confusing that is now that I've said it out loud. The manga panels start moving, panning, if you will, towards the moon. And as we already know, Veda is stored on the moon, so I imagine this was meant to be our hint towards that. But then again, as one of your commenters just recently said, this would have been released after that, right? Well, I've also said I have no friggin' idea. Ignore this segment. Ignore this part. We then get a full-page panel of Hanyo going through their doubts. She says that Veda is always tracking the location of themselves in the solar furnace. If that is the case, then why aren't the Gundams coming? If they aren't, does that imply her actions are allowed? Behind each of the speech bubbles is one or two blurbs of doubt, trying to find a direction and decide on a path forwards. Hanyo is simply just stuck in a loop, and it is a nice page for it. I like the indecision bubbles around her as she tries to logic it all out. Also, the background clearly seems like it is meant to be Veda's chamber that we later see in the show, or at least the place where Scheinberg's body is located, I guess. There's something being indicated by that giant sphere thing all around all the columns, or I'm saying surrounded by the columns. So, that's what I mean to indicate here. Hanyo hears a voice say that she is herself and to make her own decision. The line mimics what Fawn said in a previous flashback, and as we pan back over to Fawn, his eyes now closed again. So, kept my eye on it, and there we are. Hanyo looks at him questioningly, asking if he spoke. Stating that Fawn shouldn't be able to speak, Hanyo says that they have decided. We then see the jet soaring away, the telltale sign of GN particles in its wake, as we see Hanyo's choice is to save Fawn, as it is her will. Back at Angel Base, every time I say Angel Base or something, I think of Angel Grove from Power Rangers, and I think of the Zordon's chamber. So I was like, back at Ranger HQ. Back at Angel Base, as the entire remaining group make their way down a hallway, Shaw reconfirms that Hanyo had said earlier, Veda will not abandon someone who is vital to the plan. She confirms this by example, saying that it is why Veda recognized Angel when Shaw created it. Sherilyn adds that the new Gundams are the same way. They aren't in the plan, but are being allowed because they are currently helpful. I have to say, this seems like a fairly chaotic way to handle new additions to any plan. Incorporate anything that helps and not interfering with anything that does anything anyone does in your name. Actually, I do make a lot of religious examples in the show, but this kind of does feel like what the sentiment of what it means to be God, right? Veda is God in this sense, and that people do a lot of fucked up shit in your name. But if you have a stance of not interfering, like human autonomy is a thing, God, this is just Veda is just like a religious thing, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, some of you might say in the comments, no, you're fucking wrong. Get off of this train of thought. But I think I'm onto something here. It's up here. Chaw continues by stating that they may have a chance if they reaffirm their worth, and to do that, they have to secure Fawn and the solar furnace. Following along at the rear, Echo asks how they could do such a thing, that there is no way to comb space for such a tiny emergency unit. Just a quick aside here. If the emergency unit's so tiny that somebody couldn't find you in space, then what's the point of it? Also, Witch from Mercury literally had a sized doll this big, acted as an emergency unit. Chaw then mentions a doctor that she knows, Joyce Moreno, and Sherilyn asks if that's the Master's friend, clearly referring to Ian in this regard. Chaw confirms that he is, and that he's a former member of Doctors Without Borders, and should remember Meister 874 as well. Sherilyn perks up at this, realizing that if Hanyo is to save Fawn, that this is her likely course of action. Chaw then voices her doubt, saying that there is a possibility that Hanyo will obey Veda's instructions and surrender the solar furnace alongside Fawn. Sherilyn is still perked up and declares that she won't. As a member of Angel, she will definitely save Fawn. We get a brief glimpse of an emotionless Hanyo sitting in Fawn's lap and flying the jet somewhere, as Echo says that if that is how it is, then they should go too, then asking where Dr. Moreau is. Or Morano is. Marino? God, if this was animated, I could at least... Well, no, we watched it in subtitles, so I wouldn't know anyway. There is no saving me. On our final page, we get a single shot of the Ptolemos hanging in space above the Earth, as Charles says that they are with the members of Celestial Being on board the ship. Overall, another great chapter, wrapping up the Thrones encounter and moving into the whole who or what is Hanyo question. Bond gets a funny moment when he calls Hanyo a bitch for taking control from him. Then a flashback to when he was deep for a second, telling Hanyo that she was a real girl. It was nice to get the crew that usually doesn't get a lot of scenes into the frames and doing stuff. Normally they just get exposition, and that was kind of what was going on here. But since they had stakes in the threat, It felt like action exposition, which is, I guess, the best form of exposition in my understanding or my regard. I imagine the whole "what is Hanyo really" thing will be answered in the coming chapters. With the real thing hanging over us now of if Angel is actually going to make contact with Celestial Being at this point, because it seems like Celestial Being doesn't know about them in the show. So it seems also, again, I hate saying also constantly, but it also seems like the thing to do in like a manga like this would be to they go somewhere else instead so that we never have to deal with it in the show or in an animated way. And that way, they still get everything they want in the manga, and the show remains separate. I'd give this a chapter a 7 out of 10. It wasn't quite as good as the chapter before it, and it lacked some of the hallmarks I've liked before, like a celestial being member getting punked. Overall enjoyable, and none of the horrible art choices from the early chapters. Good stuff. So, once again, this has been Theta for Stone Faced Reactions, reacting to another chapter of Manga 00F. Thank you all for joining me. I'll see you next time.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another Stone-Faced Reactions. If you have an idea of another video we could go ahead and watch, go ahead and put it in the comments down below and we'll add it to the wheel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about this video, what parts you liked. And until then, we'll see you next time. Is this too goofy?